Look, I have been running combat training at the Galactic Military Academy for 17 cycles now, and I have seen some absolutely ridiculous decisions come down from command. But this took the prize for sheer unfiltered stupidity. A human. They sent us a human. I stood there on the observation deck, my forearms crossed in what I hoped conveyed maximum disapproval, watching the transport shuttle settle onto the landing pad with all the grace of a drunk Thorian at a gravity bar. The hydraulics hissed, the ramp descended, and out stepped possibly the least impressive specimen I had ever laid eyes on. She was short. Absurdly short. Maybe came up to my mid-thorax if I was being generous. No natural armor plating. No visible weapons. No extra limbs. No sensory antennae. Nothing that screamed apex predator, or even moderately concerning herbivore. Just soft skin, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a ridiculous amount of hair tied back in what I assumed was some sort of primitive fashion statement. This was who Command sent to train the Krell Cubs. The Krell Cubs. Let me explain something about Krell Cubs. For those fortunate enough to never have encountered them, they are, without exaggeration, the most violently aggressive pack hunters in 7 sectors. Their species does not do gentle. They do not do cautious. They barely do survival instinct, because their first instinct when meeting anything new is to tear it apart and sort out the consequences later. We have lost 4 trainers in the past 2 cycles. 4, 1 Bendari warrior, 2 Thorian shock troops, and a Xylothian combat specialist, whose exoskeleton was rated for planetary assault. All of them lasted less than a week before medical intervention became necessary. And now Command, in their infinite wisdom, decided that what this situation really needed was a fragile, tiny, unarmed human who looked like she would lose a fight with a stiff breeze. I clicked my mandibles together in frustration, a habit my clutchmate always said made me sound like a disgruntled administrator. The human walked across the landing pad, carrying a single bag, looking around the facility with what I could only describe as mild curiosity. Not fear, not apprehension, just curiosity. Oh, this was going to be a disaster of legendary proportions. The human, whose identification listed her as Maya Reeves, cleared security and made her way toward the main training grounds. I followed at a distance, partly out of professional obligation and partly because I wanted to witness this catastrophe firsthand so I could give an accurate report to Command about their monumentally terrible decision-making process. She walked with this easy, relaxed gait that suggested either supreme confidence or complete ignorance of what she was walking into. I was betting heavily on the latter. Dargon, our Bendari weapons master, spotted her first. His 6 eyes widened in what I recognized as pure disbelief. He lumbered over to me, his massive frame casting a shadow that could eclipse a small moon. "That is the human," he rumbled, his voice like rocks grinding together in a planetary core. "Apparently so," I replied, not bothering to hide my disdain. "She looks like a snack," Thargon observed, and he was not being metaphorical. "The cubs will eat her. Literally. They will consume her flesh before first meal break." "I give her 10 minutes," chimed in Scree, our flight combat instructor, who had perched on the overhead railing. Her feathers ruffled in what passed for Avarian laughter. "Maybe 15 if she runs fast." Maya Reeves seemed utterly oblivious to our conversation, which was probably for the best. She set down her bag near the equipment storage and started stretching. Of all things, stretching, like she was preparing for some casual athletic activity and not about to enter an enclosure with the galaxy's most efficient murder machines. "Did Command send any special equipment with her?" Torgon asked, his tone almost hopeful. "Kinetic shields? Stun batons? Personal barrier field?" I checked my data pad. Nothing. Just her, the clothes on her back and whatever is in that bag. Does the bag contain weapons at least? Doubtful. Scree clicked her beak rapidly, her species equivalent of hysterical laughter. "This is going to be the shortest training assignment in Academy history. Should we alert medical? Have them standing by?" "Already done," I confirmed. "Also contacted the ceremonial death rites coordinator." Seemed prudent. Maya finished her stretching routine and actually smiled, looking toward the holding area where the Krell Cubs were currently contained. The holding area that was reinforced with triple-layered durasteel and energy dampeners. The holding area that still bore claw marks from the last containment breach. She started walking toward the entrance gate. "Should we stop her?" Thorgon asked, his voice uncertain. "Why?" I replied, my mandibles clicking with dark amusement. "Command wants her in there. Who are we to question orders? We all moved to the observation windows. Nobody wanted to miss this. The gate opened with its usual grinding protest, and Maya Reeves stepped into the training arena like she was entering a garden party instead of a potential massacre zone. The Krell cubs were clustered at the far end, 12 of them, each already the size of a full-grown Thorian. Their scales gleamed under the artificial lighting, ridge crests raised in what we had learned meant heightened aggression. Their claws, each as long as my primary hand, scraped against the reinforced floor plating, leaving fresh gouges in the metal. They spotted her immediately. Every single spine on my body went rigid. This was it. This was the moment where Command's terrible decision would result in a fatality report that I would have to file in triplicate. The Alpha Cub, a scarred male we had designated as Subject 17 because naming them felt too personal given their mortality rate among trainers, lifted his head. His nostrils flared, processing her scent. His lips curled back, revealing 3 rows of serrated teeth that could shear through combat armor. Then something happened that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Subject 17 chirped. Not growled, not roared, not made any of the threatening vocalizations we had documented over months of observation. He chirped, like some kind of domesticated nest creature. And then he ran toward her. No, I heard myself say, my translator barely catching the word. No, no, no. The other cubs followed instantly, breaking formation, their pack mentality kicking in, but not in any way we had ever witnessed before. They were not coordinating an attack pattern. They were not flanking. They were racing each other to reach her first, stumbling over their own oversized feet in their eagerness. Shield protocol. Thargon bellowed, reaching for the emergency containment controls. Wait, Scree shrieked, her wings snapping open in shock. Look, just look. The cubs reached Maya Reeves in a wave of scales, claws, and pure predatory mass. 12 Krell cubs, each perfectly capable of dismembering an armored soldier, converged on the tiny human female. And they stopped. Just stopped, mere inches from her, their bodies quivering with what I could only describe as excited anticipation. Subject 17, the most aggressive of the entire pack, the one who had hospitalized our last trainer by simply breathing too aggressively in his direction, lowered his massive head and pressed it against Maya's outstretched hand. The sound he made was something between a purr and a rumble, a vocalization that was not in any of our behavioral databases. Maya laughed. Actually laughed, like this was delightful instead of completely impossible. She started scratching behind Subject 17's auditory ridge, and his rear leg began twitching in apparent pleasure. What in the name of the Galactic Council? I breathed, my translator struggling to capture my absolute incomprehension. Behind me, Thargon made a sound like a loading weapon, powering down. Scree had gone completely silent, her head tilted at an angle that suggested her brain was attempting to reboot. The other 11 cubs crowded around Maya, each trying to get closer, pushing against each other with none of their usual aggressive dominance displays. They were acting like, and I could barely form the thought, like they wanted affection from a human. This violated every single thing we knew about Krell behavior. Every single thing. Maya moved among the cubs like she had been doing this her entire life, which was impossible because humans had only made contact with Krell approximately 3 cycles ago, and those interactions had mostly involved diplomatic incidents and property damage. She made these soft clicking sounds with her mouth. Nothing like proper Krell communication. Yet somehow the cubs responded. Subject 17, still pressed against her side like some kind of oversized lapdog, made answering clicks. The others formed a loose circle around her, their aggressive posturing completely absent. This is not possible, I muttered, my eyes locked on the scene before me. This cannot be happening. Subject 9, a female cub we had designated as particularly unstable, rolled onto her back, exposing her vulnerable underbelly to a creature she could kill with a casual swipe. Maya crouched down and actually rubbed the cub's stomach, and Subject 9's rear legs kicked in the air with what could only be described as joy. Joy. From a Krell. I remembered the last time someone had entered that arena. Kardash, the Bendari warrior. He had been a combat veteran of 43 planetary campaigns, decorated for valor, trained in 17 different martial disciplines. He had walked in with full kinetic armor, a neural disruptor, and a confidence that came from surviving things that would give most species nightmares. The cubs had treated him like a training dummy. Subject 17 had gone for his throat within the first 30 seconds. 3 others had flanked him, working with the terrifying coordination their species was known for, Corvash had lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds before we had to initiate emergency extraction. His armor had been shredded. 2 of his arms had required complete reconstruction. He still sent me messages occasionally, mostly consisting of creative suggestions about what Command could do with their Krell training program. Before Corvash, there had been Scylla and Tormek, a Thorian shock troop pair who had insisted they could handle the Cubs together. They had made it to day 3 before Subject 12 had figured out how to breach their shield harmonics. The medical bay still had scorch marks from that incident, and before them Teles the Xylothian, whose exoskeleton was rated to withstand direct plasma fire. The Cubs had found the joints. They always found the joints. Teles now worked in administrative processing and refused to even look at images of Krell. Yet here was Maya Reeves, with no armor, no weapons, no backup, and the Cubs were competing for her attention like she was distributing territorial rights to premium hunting grounds. She stood up and made a sharp whistling sound. Every single Cub sat simultaneously. Their haunches hit the floor with 12 synchronized thuds that shook the observation deck. Did she just? Scree began, then stopped, her translator apparently as confused as she was. She issued a command, Thargon finished, his voice barely above a whisper, and they obeyed. Maya walked a slow circle around the sitting Cubs, her posture relaxed but her movements deliberate. She maintained eye contact with each one, something our training manuals explicitly warned against, because direct eye contact with Krell was interpreted as a challenge to dominance. The Cubs did not challenge back. They watched her with what I could only describe as rapt attention, their ridge crests lowered in a position we had never seen before. Subject 17 made a low rumbling sound, almost inquisitive. Maya responded with her own vocalization, something that should not have worked, should not have meant anything to a Krell neural pattern, yet the Cubs clearly understood. Subject 17 stood, walked to the equipment storage we kept in the arena for enrichment purposes, picked up a training marker in his jaws, and brought it back to Maya, dropping it at her feet. He was playing fetch. A Krell Cub was playing fetch. I felt my secondary brain starting to shut down from sheer cognitive overload. I need to sit down, I announced to no one in particular. Nobody argued. After I recovered from my existential crisis, which took approximately 3 minutes and a significant amount of deep breathing exercises, Maya began what she apparently considered a proper training session. And oh, what a training session it was. She started by having the Cubs run laps, not coordinated tactical movement drills, not combat simulations, just running in circles around the arena perimeter like some kind of exercise routine you would give to younglings at a recreational facility. The Cubs did it, enthusiastically. Subject 17 led the pack, his massive form actually looking graceful as he loped around the arena. The others followed in a loose formation, occasionally bumping into each other but showing none of the aggressive territorial behavior that usually resulted in bloodshed. She has them doing cardio, Scree observed, her tone suggesting she had just witnessed someone try to breathe vacuum without a helmet. Cardio. The apex predators of 7 sectors are doing cardio. Perhaps it is a human bonding ritual, Thargon suggested, though he sounded uncertain, building pack cohesion through shared physical exertion. Or perhaps, I interjected, my mandibles clicking with what I hoped sounded like intellectual superiority and not desperate confusion. She has absolutely no idea what she is doing and is simply stalling until the inevitable mauling. Except the inevitable mauling did not come. After the running, Maya introduced what she called obstacle work. She had apparently brought equipment in that ridiculous bag of hers. Collapsible barriers, target markers, and something that looked like a long stick with fabric attached to the end. She set up a course that wound through the arena, placing markers at specific intervals. Then she demonstrated what she wanted, walking through the course herself, touching each marker in sequence. The Cubs watched with an intensity we had only seen when they were stalking prey. Maya pointed at Subject 17 and made a gesture. He went through the course, perfectly, touched every marker in the correct order, navigated the barriers without destroying them, and returned to Maya, where he sat and waited for what I could only assume was approval. She gave it, scratching that spot behind his auditory ridge that apparently turned Krell Cubs into compliant puddles of scaled affection. That is a tactical infiltration pattern, Thargon said slowly, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. She just taught him a tactical infiltration pattern, in under 10 minutes, without violence. Impossible, I stated flatly. because acknowledging reality at this point felt like surrendering to madness. But Maya was not done. Oh no, she was just getting started. She brought out the stick with fabric, what she called a training lure according to her muttered comments that our audio pickups captured. She moved it in patterns, fast and unpredictable, and the cubs tracked it with perfect focus. Their eyes locked onto the target, their bodies coiled with predatory readiness. Then Maya gave a command, something that sounded like wait, and the cubs froze. All 12 of them, mid-pounce, their muscles trembling with restrained energy but not moving. She held them there for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Impulse control, I heard myself say. She is teaching them impulse control. When Maya finally released them with another command, the cubs exploded into motion, working together to corner and capture the lure. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a coordinated pack hunt that showed every bit of the lethal efficiency their species was known for, but directed and controlled. She ran them through formation drills, recall exercises, and something she called desensitization training, where she made loud noises and sudden movements while the cubs learned to check with her first before reacting. Every single exercise we had failed to implement over months of failed attempts, she accomplished in under an hour. Subject 9 performed a perimeter sweep pattern that our tactical instructors had been trying to teach for 6 weeks. Subject 23, the smallest and most skittish of the pack, held a defensive position for a full minute without breaking. Subject 17 responded to hand signals alone, no vocalizations required. I think, Scree said quietly, her feathers flat against her body in submission. I think we may have been doing this wrong. You think? I shot back, my sarcasm reaching levels that probably violated workplace professionalism protocols. But even I had to admit, grudgingly, painfully, that Maya Reeves knew exactly what she was doing, even if it made absolutely no sense by any galactic standard we had ever established. I could not take it anymore. Professional protocol be damned. I needed answers before my brain leaked out of my auditory canals. I stormed down to the arena floor during the break period, where Maya was distributing what appeared to be food rewards to the cubs. They sat in perfect formation, waiting their turn like disciplined soldiers instead of the chaotic murder machines I knew them to be. Explain, I demanded, my translator cranking my tone up to maximum authority. Explain how you have accomplished in one session what we could not achieve in months. Explain why the most dangerous predators in known space are acting like domesticated companion animals. Maya looked up at me, and the infuriating human actually grinned. Like my existential crisis was amusing to her. Oh, they are not that bad, she said, her tone so casual it made my spine ridges itch. Back home we have been working with pack predators for thousands of years. These guys? She gestured at Subject 17, who was currently leaning against her leg hard enough that any normal being would topple over. They are basically just wolves. Big, scaly, kind of murdery wolves. But wolves. Wolves, I repeated, my translator making the word sound appropriately skeptical. Yep, canines. We domesticated them so long ago that nobody even remembers when it started. Turned them into dogs. Some breeds are great with kids. Some breeds can smell diseases. Some breeds will absolutely wreck an intruder. She scratched Subject 17's chin and his eyes half closed in contentment. You just have to understand pack dynamics, clear hierarchy, consistent rules, positive reinforcement, and knowing when to be firm versus when to give affection. You are comparing Krell to Earth animals, I said, my mandibles clicking so fast they might have generated sparks. Well, yeah, we have also worked with bears, big cats, even reptiles. My uncle trained alligators for a wildlife sanctuary. Alligators are these armored ambush predators, with about 4 brain cells total, and he taught them to come when called. She shrugged like this was perfectly normal information. Humans have this thing where we see a dangerous predator and think, hey, I bet I could be friends with that. Sometimes it works out great, sometimes someone loses a hand, but we keep trying. You domesticated apex predators, Dagon said from behind me. I had not heard him approach, but apparently I was not the only one desperate for answers. Multiple species. Intentionally. Oh, tons of them. Horses were prey animals that could kick your skull in. We rode them into battle. Elephants could crush us flat. We taught them tricks. Falcons could take out your eyes. We trained them to hunt with us. Maya's grin widened. Humans do not really do the whole respecting natural danger thing very well. We see something that could kill us and go, neat pet. My secondary brain chose that moment to shut down entirely. Your species is insane, I managed. Yeah, Maya agreed cheerfully. But it makes us really good at this job. 2 days later, the moment I had been dreading arrived with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. Command sent an evaluator. Not just any evaluator. They sent war leader Kreshthor, a senior Krell warrior whose reputation made hardened combat veterans reconsider their career choices. He was massive even by Krell standards, easily twice the size of the cubs, with scales that looked like they had been through planetary bombardment and decided to stick around out of spite. Scars crisscrossed his hide in patterns that told stories of battles I did not want to know about. He had personally led 17 conquest campaigns. His kill count was classified because the actual number apparently violated several treaties regarding excessive force. And now he was walking toward our training facility to assess whether the cubs were being prepared adequately for military service. This is it, I said to Thorgon as we watched Kreshthor's approach on the monitors. This is where everything falls apart. The cubs will revert to instinct. Krella's social hierarchy is absolute. They will defer to the war leader and all of Maya's progress will evaporate like water on a sunside colony. Perhaps, Thorgon rumbled, though he sounded uncertain, or perhaps not. There is no perhaps. Krell pack structure is genetically hardwired. The cubs will recognize a dominant warrior and fall into submissive behavior patterns. Or worse, they will challenge him and we will have a bloodbath in the training arena that will require explanations I do not want to give. Scree landed on my shoulder, her talons gripping perhaps a bit too tightly. Where is the human? In the arena with the cubs. I sent her a warning, but she just smiled and said it would be fine. I clicked my mandibles in frustration. Fine. She said fine. Like a war leader evaluation is a casual social visit. Kreshthor entered the facility, and I swear the temperature dropped several degrees. His presence was something you felt in your core survival instincts, the part of your brain that screamed predator, run, hide, prey. He moved with the kind of controlled power that suggested he could explode into violence at any microsecond. His ridge crest was fully raised, a display of dominance that was both threat and statement. His claws scraped against the floor plating, leaving grooves in reinforced metal that was supposed to be scratch-resistant. We guided him to the observation deck first, protocol demanding that evaluators observe before interacting. Maya was running the cubs through formation exercises, completely unaware or completely unconcerned that a legendary Krell warrior had just entered the facility. Kreshthor watched in silence, his eyes tracking every movement. And I prepared for disaster. Kreshthor watched for 20 minutes without speaking, without moving, without giving any indication of what he was thinking. Then he made a sound, low and rumbling, that I had never heard before. It almost sounded like approval. I will enter the arena, he announced, his voice like tectonic plates shifting. This was it. The end of Maya's miraculous run. I started composing the incident report in my head. Kreshthor descended to the arena floor. The door opened. He stepped through. The cubs noticed immediately, their heads snapping toward him in perfect unison. Subject 17's ridge crest started to rise, an automatic response to a dominant presence. Maya made a soft clicking sound. Subject 17's crest lowered. He looked at Maya, then back at Kreshthor, then returned his attention to Maya. He stayed in formation. All 12 cubs stayed in formation, acknowledging the war leader's presence but not breaking their focus on their trainer. Kreshthor stopped walking, his massive head tilted slightly, a gesture I recognized as surprise, though I had never expected to see it on a Krell warrior. Maya turned to face him, and by all the stars in the void, she smiled and gave a small respectful nod, but did not show submission, did not show fear, just professional acknowledgement. War leader Kreshthor, she said simply, the cubs are ready for your evaluation. Kreshthor studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that made my worldview crack down the middle like a fractured viewport. He lowered his ridge crest. Slightly, marginally, but unmistakably. A Krell warrior had just shown respect to a human. You understand pack bond, Kreshthor said, his words slow and deliberate. Your species understands what we are. Not monsters to be contained, not weapons to be aimed. Pack family. Purpose, yes. Maya replied, her tone gentle. We understand. The galactic community treats Krell as problems to solve. You treat them as individuals to teach. Cresthor's gaze swept over the cubs, who remained disciplined but relaxed. This is why we agreed to let humans train our young. Your species knows what it means to run with predators, to hunt beside them, to trust them. He turned back to Maya, and his next words felt like they rewrote everything I thought I knew. You do not fear us, you respect us. There is difference.